Game on, ladies and gentlemen. And you're listening to the brand new Box Score Media podcast. Yes, that is right. It's no longer Box Score Radio. This podcast will be called the Box Score Media Podcast. Didn't think it would make much sense to keep calling it Box Score Radio, considering this isn't radio. But it should be the same. Planning on Monday and Friday podcast 2 times a week for your listening pleasure, and this will only be uploaded to YouTube. So let's get right started. I thought I'd go back in time a little bit to the national championship game between LSU and Clemson and give my take on it. You heard a lot of people talk about how good LSU was. You heard a lot of people talk about how bad Trevor Lawrence was. You know, he was 18 of 37, 234 yards, 0 touchdowns. He had a rushing touchdown. But to me, here's the thing. Clemson won 29 straight games. Okay? When you win 29 straight games, 2 conference championships, a national championship, no matter how much you want to win, no matter how motivated you are to win, no matter how talented you are to win, the one thing you're not is hungry to win. That was the word that I think a lot of the big-time analysts, a lot of the experts forgot to mention about how hungry LSU was to win this game. Okay, this is a team that had to watch their rival Alabama for 6-7 years in a row, win the SEC. Besides the one time against Georgia in which they beat him in the championship, it was a clean sweep for Alabama. It was a complete dominance, a decade of dominance. And then LSU, though talented, they lacked a quarterback, they lacked a good offense, they were strong defensively. All the pieces came together. They knew they had great talent at quarterback with Joe Burrow. They knew at wide receiver, Chase, Jefferson, Thaddeus Moss. They had a lot of great talent at wide receiver. They had Edwards-Helaire, who I think was a huge factor in the championship game. He only had 16 carries, 110 yards. I thought if they gave him the ball a little earlier in the game, he could have slowed it down a little bit, and it might have made the game closer, but he definitely put a stamp on it in the fourth quarter. They basically said, hey, we got 5 minutes left. We're up 42-25. Helaire, just get the ball and just end this damn thing. And he did. But all that coming together, they knew that they had an opportunity to win the championship. And they were hungry for it. They had to watch Alabama win it. They had to watch other teams win it. They never got to the playoffs. Clemson's been there all but 1 year with 2 national championships. They weren't hungry. LSU was hungry for this game. And they did exactly what they needed to do to win it. 17-point win, and you can talk all you want to, all the Clemson fans, all the haters of LSU, everybody talking about how the refs ruined the game because of that offensive pass interference that they called. Listen, that would have got him within 10. I agree with that. But the bottom line is, as long as Joe Burrow was quarterbacking LSU, the LSU Tigers were not losing this game. It was that simple. Congratulations to LSU. It's nice to see a different team win it. I think the aura of a team that hasn't been there before but is considered the best team, it makes it a little more exciting. I'm going to get into the NFL playoffs and how much more exciting they were this year, and that the Patriots weren't dominating and that the Patriots got bounced out early. And in fact, you can even look at the numbers on that, but that's a later topic. But when you have different teams in the championship game, other than, Clemson and Alabama, the same matchup, people want to tune into it, especially when the other team that's representing, besides Alabama or Clemson, is favored to win the game. So Joe Burrow, 31 of 49, 463 yards and 5 touchdowns against the number one scoring offense, against the number one scoring defense in the nation. That's sick, nasty, people. Do you have any idea how damn good that is? Do you have any idea how clutch that is? Those are numbers that high schoolers, the number one team in the state, don't get. 463 yards and 5 touchdowns in a national championship game. In the most important game of your life against the best team you've ever played, and you put up those numbers and you win by 17. Unreal. They were the best team all year. Their defense was shaky at the beginning, but I even said it. I said, watch them in the last couple weeks. They're pretty damn good. And if you look at the games against Vanderbilt, against Ole Miss, what did we see? We saw that they came out to a huge lead early, and then they gave him what I like to call little brother points. Do you know when you're playing your little brother in street ball? And I wouldn't know because I was the little brother, but I've seen it. You're playing your little brother in street ball. It's 1st and 10. You're up 9-0. What do? Oh, I might as well let him score one just to, so he doesn't crying that he got shut out. I'll give him one. I'll throw him one bone. That's exactly what LSU did this year with their defense. They played solid when they needed to, and when the game was in hand, and Joe Burrow threw his 6 touchdown passes, and he had his 500 yards, what did they do? They let back. They let the other team score. I'm sure they rotated some second stringers and third stringers in, and they let the other team get those little brother points, and that was it. Okay? That's why their defense wasn't hyped up as much as it should be. But in the end, they were talented, they were fast, they were strong up front. I mean, if you look at the first half stats, well, first of all, total yards 628 to 394. Okay? 10 minutes of time of possession LSU had, more than Clemson. 160 yards rushing compared to 165, but considering the fact that Clemson seemed to do that all the time, that was their game plan, was to run the ball. You saw what happened. They wanted to get Trevor Lawrence running the ball. They wanted to get ETN running the ball. He had 15 carries, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Okay? He had a fantastic touchdown run, but the bottom line is their game plan for Clemson was to run the ball and be balanced, and LSU was like, you know what? We're not going to try to be balanced. Even though I thought they could have been and still won by 17, they didn't want to be balanced. They knew, hey, they did exactly what you do when you're in a championship game. You do whatever it is that got you there. Okay? You give the ball to your best player, Joe Burrow, and you let him win it. Okay? That's how you win championship games. And I'm talking to you, the Seattle Seahawks of 2000 whatever. When Marshawn Lynch is the best back in football and it's the 1-yard line, second and goal, you give it to your best player. That's how you win championships. You don't change anything. You do what it takes. What got you there? You just stick to the game plan and you're fine. But for some reason, people get nervous and they get scared and they think they got to change it up and they screw up. So LSU didn't. 15-0, SEC champs, Heisman Trophy, coaches of the year, on I think offensive and defensive probably, at least coordinators offensively, and 15-0 national championship. Couldn't ask for a better season, and it was nice. Even though LSU's been there before, and I'd like to see like a Cinderella, the bottom line is not seeing Alabama or Clemson winning again is fine by me, because it's the first time since Ohio State won it in 2014, which was the first year of the playoff, that this happened, or 2013, whatever. And that closes the book on the college football season. Side note, for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, as some of you know, I am a Notre Dame fan. They finished 11-2 on the season. They beat Iowa State in the Camping World Bowl. It was a game that I wasn't confident in them going into, because I didn't see how they get motivated playing Iowa State. That opponent in that stadium in that bowl game when they were 10-2, come on. But they finished 12th in the AP poll. They got 11 wins. They looked good. After that, they had that loss to Michigan, which was bad. They had the close win against Virginia Tech, and they just dominated the last 5 games of the season. I couldn't be more proud of them. They did a tremendous job. And Brian Kelly, a lot of people hate him. Paul Feinbaum is hating on him by people saying he needs to go to the NFL. He's the perfect fit for Notre Dame. I truly believe he's the perfect fit for Notre Dame. Because you can't tell me there's not a lot of entitled kids there that's never been bitched at in their life, and he's probably the coach to do that. He might treat his players bad, but you know what? They might end up better off in the end. But it was a great season. It was definitely a better season than we've seen, and you know why? Because that different team won it. We can't. Everybody wants to hype up dynasties. In the end, it's about the unpredictability. When does sports get boring? When do sports get boring? When it becomes unpredictable. It's not high offensive games. It's not good defensive games. It's when it's predictable. And it was anything but predictable this year. So that's closing the book on college football. We'll see you next season. I want to go ahead and switch gears over to UFC 246. The new and improved Conor McGregor. And yes, I do say new and improved because this is somebody that has his head on straight, that is not focused on necessarily hyping the fight because he knows he doesn't have to. Be humble, be respectful, spread the perfume, and go out there and focus on fighting. This was a predictable outcome for me. I said under 2 minutes Donald Cerrone would get knocked out. I understand he's naturally bigger. I understand he's fought at welterweight before. I understand 460 days. And that's, to me, is like when fighters, when you hear a bunch of analysts, MMA analysts say, I'm surprised he won because he had a year off. What fighter doesn't have a year off? What big-name fighter in today's mixed martial arts doesn't have at least a year off? I can name like 3 or 4 in my head, big fighters that aren't even champions that only fight like once a year. So it's not a big deal to me, and you're training all the time anyway. So what's the damn big deal? In fact, I think the less you get punched, considering the fact that you're getting punched and kicked and elbowed and kneed in the fucking head, pardon my language, the fact that you're doing that on a daily basis 4 or 5 times a week, it would make sense to me that if you fight less, you'd be more apt to compete and brawl in there. I can understand staying hungry, staying physically fit, motivated, but Donald Cerrone proved one thing. Eventually you hit a peak. This is somebody who's had 50 professional fights. He's had like 15, 16 fights in the UFC. I think he's like 30-something years of age. I don't want to see, I'm not saying retire Donald Cerrone, but what I'm saying is I don't want to see what happened to Rashad Evans happen to Donald Cerrone. Rashad Evans was a lightweight champion, won the Ultimate Fighter at heavyweight. He was one of the biggest stars in the sport. And fast forward to 6-7 months ago, his last UFC fight, he was on the UFC Fight Pass prelims, and he gets knocked out in the first round. It's eventually you got to know, hey, you just can't take that shot anymore. And this isn't, you're not wearing a helmet. It's not less contact. You're taking more and more blows to the head. Don't end up a damn vegetable, okay? Know when to get out. I'm not saying retire Donald, but I'm saying your next opponent can't be a top 5. It can't be a top 10. Your next opponent has to be an unranked. If you do fight again, it's got to be 170 because you can't do the weight cut. That's just going to affect your brain. And you're going to have to fight somebody that's a lesser opponent. I mean, he threw one damn shot. He threw one leg kick to the body, I think, and that was it. And then he was clipped in the left. They clinched. Boom. Conor hits him with some shoulders. Backs up. Gets him with the leg kick. And then that's it. I mean, it was ridiculous. But I just don't want to see him ending up like Rashad Evans and having to just continuously get down and down and down. You have 50 professional fights. You fought 15 plus times in the UFC. It's okay to say I'm done. I know he's made the money. There's definitely you can make money as coaching. There's definitely a lot he can do because he's still a big name, and he's got a brand to him that's unique because he's cowboy. He trains out in New Mexico. He has his own ranch. He has a bunch of different sponsors like P3 and I'm sure energy stuff. This isn't the end of him, but you got to take a step back. Take some time off, regather yourself. Think about your next couple. If you got 50 fights down too, I mean, damn. I mean, do you really tell yourself I want to fight an MMA fight 50 plus times? Damn, that's a lot. But congratulations, Connor. I'm telling you, stay humble. Not because I think it's better. I mean, you want to draw more fans. You want people to like you and hate you and just see you, whatever. But I think it's better for him winning because that's all I give a damn about. All the other stuff is BS. I care about him fighting and winning. So, and if he wants to get back on the pedestal of being the best in the world, pound for pound, you're gonna have to stay focused on fighting and not the outside crap. Also on the card, we had Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington. This was a snoozer. A lot of boo birds. Holly Holm wins unanimous decision. Aleksei Oleinik beats Maurice Green by a submission armbar. Brian Kelleher submission over O'Day Osborne. And then Anthony Pettis losing to Diego Ferreira by rear naked choke. This is another one where it just shows that, because Anthony Pettis was looked at as the best lightweight in the world. He did the flying cage thing. He did the kick off the cage. He took out Benson Henderson by armbar. He was on top. RDA comes in there. He schools him. And then he slowly has to get his way back. He beats Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, which was a great one. And then he goes up against Nate Diaz. He's schooled. Then he has this fight here, and he loses to Diego Ferreira, who's lesser known, but, talented as hell. He's 17-2 record. But it just goes to show it doesn't last forever. And I'm not saying it's the beginning of the end, but it's going to be tough. This was also, and he's also fluctuating. He's going back and forth from 170 to 155. I believe you got to do what Khabib does. Stay at one weight. Khabib's 29-0 because he's one, he's the best grappler in the world, and two, he's been consistent on his focus and his goals. It's been, I want to be the best. I want to be undefeated, lightweight, 155-pound champ, and this is what I'm going to do. And he had that plan, and they stick to the plan, and they get it done. So that basically wraps up. There's a couple other fights, but I don't have time to go into detail on those. Switch over to the NBA scores. By the way, I have officially declared myself a Utah Jazz fan. I've been teetering between teams for the last couple years. Like, who do I have to declare who I'm going to root for? I'm rooting for the Jazz, and I'm going to tell you why. And it's not because they're 30-13 tied with the Clippers for third place in the West. Okay, I'm saying that they're one of the most consistent franchises in sports. I mean, Donovan Mitchell is the biggest name they have on their team. He's their star player. And I guarantee you he's not even top 10. He could be, but he's probably not even top 10 to most experts. But they're continuously good. They're continuously winning playoff games. They took out Oklahoma City last year. Their consistencies, they've made the playoffs like the last 4 or 5 years. And this year, against a heavily stacked West, they won 10 games in a row, just lost to I think New Orleans maybe, breaking their streak. But they're one of the most consistent franchises, and they are a superstar away. I'm talking one superstar away from being Western Conference champions. I truly believe that. I don't know who that superstar would be. You can't have LeBron, you can't have Kawhi. I'm thinking I love Paul George. Like, if Paul George went to Utah, I think they could be a legitimate threat. If Anthony Davis had gone there, I think Utah would be the number one team in the West. They're that good. They're that consistent from top to bottom. You know how shit rolls downhill. Pardon my language. They're the most consistent franchise in the NBA and maybe even in sports. And they don't have any superstar power, and they haven't had it since Malone Stockton. Name another superstar who's played for Utah since Malone Stockton. There hasn't been one, and yet they're in the playoffs every single year, winning it, competing, exciting, above 500 records. Just amazing to watch. But I'm going to head on to scores from last night. Big Monday scores. Jazz over the Pacers, 118-88. Like I said, gives them a 30-13 record against a pretty damn good Pacers team. Pretty solid. Wizards over the Pistons, 106-100. Raptors over the Hawks, 122-117. The 76ers over the Nets, 117-111. Speaking of the Hawks, let me go back to the Hawks, by the way. I was totally wrong, I have to admit, on the Hawks. I thought at the end of last year, I said they could be a 5th seed in the East. Turns out they're last place in the East at like 10-30. They're 10-34 on the season. I don't know what the heck's going on. Again, I think maybe they just need a superstar to back up Trae Young. I like Trae Young. I think he's going to be a superstar, or at least a pretty great player. But in the end, they're last in the East, and I'm dead wrong about that projection. But you got to eat it sometimes. 76ers over the Nets, 117-111. Heat over the Kings in overtime, 118-113. Bucks over the Bulls. Thunder over the Rockets. Magic and the Thunder have had the Rockets number 2 times in a row. But I still like Houston. I still think it was a great move for Russell Westbrook. I knew it was going to work out, because eventually I knew like somebody's just going to have to say, all right, I'll take a step back. It's not like you had two. Excuse me. It's not like you had 2 ball hogs that were like, no, it's my ball, it's my ball. You had 2 ball hogs where it's like, I'm the best, no, I'm the best. Well, in the end, somebody's got to be the best, and whoever decided that, the other guy's just going to be like, look, can we just get along here and win something? Because neither one of us, it's like both of us have won scoring titles, MVPs, but can one of us win a championship? Can we just swallow our pride for a little bit and just get a championship, because that's the one thing that's eluding us right now? Magic over the Hornets, 106-83. Pelicans over the Grizzlies. Knicks beat the Cavs, 106-86. Celtics over the Lakers, 139-107. Nuggets over the Timberwolves, 107-100. Spurs over the Suns, and the Trailblazers in overtime defeat the Warriors. Warriors, I think, are like one of the last place teams in the West. I mean, Draymond Green, where are you at? What happened to we ain't going anywhere? You're going downhill quick, and everybody knew you would go downhill quick. Too many injuries, too many lost players. The same motivation ain't there, because guess what? Just like Clemson, you're not hungry anymore. You had 3 or 4 straight trips to the finals. You got 2 championships with Kevin Durant, then you got 3 with Steph Curry. So in the end, you're just not hungry anymore, and you're just not as talented. Father Time's catching up with some of those players, and it's catching up quick. All right. College basketball. Yesterday's scores: West Virginia over Texas, 97-59. Number 1 Baylor squeaks by Oklahoma, 61-57. All right. Besides Jordan Nora of Louisville and Memphis's player who decided to take the year off, not a lot of big names coming in college basketball this year. It's a down season for sure. There's not a Zion Williamson. There's not a JT or whatever, JP Barrett or whatever the guy's name from Duke was, his teammate. But there's not a lot of star power this year. I don't think hardly any. Teams are fluctuating back and forth. The Dukes, the Kentuckys, North Carolina sucks. Notre Dame sucks. Notre Dame's not really relevant in basketball, but when they are, it is a little bit better, just like in football. But like you get all these down teams. Michigan State isn't what they thought they were going to be. Kentucky's looking bad. North Carolina's terrible. Kansas ain't looking good. They got blown out by Baylor, which isn't a bad thing. But sometimes you need those teams to kind of, lift the spirits up and say, hey, look how much talent we bring in. And it's top heavy. I think it's a two-person race for number one pick, and everybody else is kind of on a level playing field, hoping they just get drafted. So I think it's going to be a down year. Let's see what the tournament holds. Maybe that'll help the tournament out, and we can see some Cinderellas, because I personally like the Cinderellas. I don't really give a damn. Everybody wants to sit there and say, well, we love when the Cinderellas get to like the Final Four, but we don't want them to win the thing because that means it shows how bad basketball is. It's like, well, do you really want to see Duke and Kentucky win it every single year? Sometimes North Carolina get up. Do you really want to see that every single year? And especially since the fact that it doesn't even matter. College football is the only college sport, that shows you who exactly the best team in college in that sport is. The way they have it set up with the 12 game schedule, 8 or 9 conference games, 14 playoff, the way they have that set up, it's the perfect way to say, hey, this team is the best team in college football. But in basketball, how many years do you see a 6-seeded UConn, a 3-seeded North Carolina, a 4-seeded Syracuse? How many times do you see that and go, well, they weren't really the best team. They weren't number one in their conference. They weren't the number one seed, so they didn't have the best record. They didn't really have the best RPI. Wins against top 25 weren't the best, but yet somehow they win it because they go on this stretch run of 6-7 games where they get hot. And in that case, it's like, okay, yeah, you won the tournament, but are you really the best all year? And since they're playing 30-plus games in the regular season and conference tournament, what does it really matter? All you got to do is get there. You hit 20. That's the thing. If I'm a coach of like North Carolina, Kansas, Michigan State, Duke, Kentucky, one of those schools that should be winning, should be top 5 every single year because they get the number 1 ranked class. They get top 5 classes every single year. There's not much parity there. 20 wins. You get to 20 wins and you're one of these schools. Why wouldn't you just start playing the bench players? It's like, do I really care that I'm a number 1 seed compared to a number 6 seed? Is it really that big of a deal considering you start off playing a 11 seed, which isn't a very good school anyway. Then you move on to a 3. Well, if you're supposedly a true number 1, you should beat them anyway. Then if you get past that, you may play a 4 or a 5. Well, the same situation, we should be better than that team anyway. If we got 20 wins, if our record's like 20-2 or 21-1, you just start setting your players, and it doesn't matter as long as you get a top 16 or even a play-in game. The first round or first 4 or whatever, it doesn't even matter. So, college basketball is down this year. It's not looking good. I don't think there's a lot of parity, and hopefully the tournament gets interesting. But so far, the regular season, there's been not a lot of action. Like Zion Williamson and Duke were dominating headlines last year. This year, there's nobody standing out, and it's based on star power, and it's a good thing. It can be a good thing because people follow them, but when there's no star power, it's worthless to even watch. But games tonight, Kansas State, Villanova, Butler. That's 13 versus 9. Kentucky, Georgia, Maryland versus Northwestern. Illinois takes on Purdue. Texas Tech versus TCU. Duke takes on Miami. And San Diego State, 19-0. I think they're one of the only undefeated teams. Takes on 5-15 Wyoming, and they're a 23-point favorite. I'll take the under, believe it or not, on that one. All right, and final topic. Of course, we got to talk about Super Bowl 54. Chiefs-Niners. My original prediction at the beginning of the year was Patriots-Saints. I thought Drew Brees would go against Tom Brady, and Drew Brees would get his second Super Bowl. Well, first week of the playoff, what we see happen. Saints lose at home, Patriots lose at home. Those two guys, AARP card cashed in, they're done. So after that first week, I said, I'm going to have to go Chiefs-Patriots. Or, Chiefs-Niners. I like Baltimore, but at the same time, it's like, have you seen Patrick Mahomes throw the ball? Tennessee Titans, they had that incredible run. They had a perfect game plan against Tom Brady and the Patriots. It was simply just outplay them because they were very similar, just outplay them. And they're depleted. And then the perfect game plan against Baltimore. Hey, Lamar Jackson can run the ball. But we have a defensive line and linebackers that can contain that. Okay, well, he can throw the ball. Well, can he throw the ball to the outside? No, he can't. He can make a throw when somebody's open. Can he make the throw? And he couldn't make the throw to the outside. We saw that. He struggled. They were one-dimensional. Well, they really didn't have any dimensions. And Tennessee just boom, boom, boom with Derrick Henry, the best back in football now. And then in the end, that's what ended up costing Tennessee against the Chiefs was, well, Tannehill's a great quarterback. He's a great backup quarterback. He's a good quarterback, but can he carry you? Can he make the throws? Can he be elite? No, he can't. They have to rely on the run game. What happens when you can't run the ball? You going to rely on his arm? You couldn't rely on his arm. And I think a lot of people probably thought that. I thought that. They got out to a 17-7 lead. The Chiefs said, okay, Tyreek, Kelsey, and whoever the hell, and Mahomes just said, all right, let's take this over. Let's take the big three over. All right, let's do this thing. And Mahomes looked fantastic running down the tightrope in the sideline for a touchdown. He looked fantastic airing it out to Sammy Watkins. He looked fantastic finding Travis Kelsey in the middle all the time. Every time, it seemed like every third down, it's like, where's Kelsey? Oh, there he is, wide open as usual. It was fantastic to watch. And this Super Bowl, and then you got the 49ers, which I've never been impressed with the NFC this year. They were the clear-cut number one. So you got the number one seed 49ers versus the number two seed Chiefs, which almost deserving of a number one seed because, again, we saw how good Baltimore was, but they got hot. You got to be hot going in. And the Chiefs were hot going in. They had just taken out the Patriots, a lot of momentum there. So we got the Chiefs, 49ers, Super Bowl 54. You got two great offenses. I'm going with the Chiefs to improve great defense on one side and solid for the Chiefs. I'm going with the Chiefs for this reason. When I look at Jimmy Garoppolo and I look at the 49ers, well, he's a good game manager. Well, they can run the ball. Well, their defense is talented. Well, their special teams is solid. Do they have Patrick Mahomes? Do they have an offense that can score points on anybody? Do they have a coach that spent 20 plus years as a head coach who's made it to one Super Bowl with the Eagles and lost and has made it to championship game after championship game after championship game, conference titles, but it's never gotten to that point? And that gray in his mustache is just coming up a little bit more. You notice those brown and gray the brown, the red, and whatever colors else is in there, the yellow and gold. In his mustache, it's getting more and more gray. This is the year to get it for him. I want to see him do it. I want to see the Chiefs win because I got to see Andy Reid with a championship. I don't care what people think about him as just an offensive coordinator. He's been fantastic. He's been the perfect guy for every team. He's taken every team to this point. So why not give him that one? And they've got the team to do it. Their defense is solid right now. I like the Chiefs in a close one. I'm not going to give you the score just yet. I like it close. It's going to be way more entertaining. First of all, like I said earlier about football and in all sports, when does it get boring? It's when it gets predictable. Last year's Super Bowl was boring because it was predictable. We knew the Rams weren't going to do anything offensively. We knew the Patriots weren't going to blow them out because they never blow anybody out. They always seem to keep it close, even though I thought the Patriots moving ball up and down the field, and they probably could have scored more if they'd taken more shots to the end zone, but for some reason, because they were in the lead, they didn't want to do that. Because they were in control of the game, controlling the clock, controlling the line of scrimmage, they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to take those chances, and it ended up being a boring game because like I said, not just because not a lot of scoring. Okay, some defensive games can be very entertaining, but it was because it was so predictable on how the game was going to go. And when it gets predictable, it gets boring and it's hard to watch. So this year is going to be way different because the teams are flat out better. Both teams are better than those teams that were in the Super Bowl last year. And it's more exciting on offense for both of them. There's a lot of questions because it's not the Patriots anymore. It's two teams that the Chiefs that have been coming up for the last couple years that now have the quarterback that is smoking hot. Play wise, not looks wise. I don't swing that way. And then you got the 49ers who were like 2-14 last year, horrible record last year, and now they got all the pieces together. They did exactly what the Browns should have done, which is take your pieces and manage that. The difference is they have a better coach in Kyle Shanahan than whatever the dude's name for the Cleveland they just let go, who shouldn't even have been there in the first place. And so now you have two equal teams that are hungry, that are physical, that are talented, and I think the Chiefs, based on their star power at offense alone, will outduel San Francisco, and they will get the ball. I'm thinking game-winning field goal or something like that. I don't think it's going to be Mahomes scoring the last touchdown. I just think I'm thinking game-winning field goal by somebody. Special teams and the kicker will be important. But I'm going with the Chiefs to win Super Bowl 54. It is going to be fantastic. I'm going to eat some wings, make some buffalo chicken dip, stuff my face, and watch some good football, all right? And I think I am pretty much tapped out here, ladies and gentlemen, coming up on the 40-minute mark. Thanks for tuning in and listening to the Box Score Media Podcast. Remember, we have transitioned from Box Score Radio to the Box Score Media Podcast. There's a lot more to do with Box Score Media. I plan on doing more, branching out more than just these podcasts and entertaining you guys in a lot more ways. So thanks for tuning in, guys. And try to upload the shows every Monday and Friday. And I will catch you on Friday, players. Have a good Tuesday.